This has allowed us to build and bring new and complex mapping capabilities into ThoughtSpot. If I use this menu on the top left here that pops out, you can see we have a few options. You can only get if you're traveling 5 minutes to the east over here, the ability to have the 3D mapping. I can go and I can use Spotter against this data set. Hi, it's Steve from 7D Experts, and I'm here today to show you a new product from ourselves called Map2Spot, which leans on ThoughtSpot's recent announcement where they've enabled custom charts, or BYOC, bring your own charts. Since ThoughtSpot introduced BYOC as a way for organizations and partners such as ourselves to extend its core capabilities, this has allowed us to build and bring new and complex mapping capabilities into ThoughtSpot. Out of the box in ThoughtSpot, you have some simple mapping options, but these are somewhat limiting for users. The three options are geo bubble maps, which are basically dots, a heat map, and area maps. In this video, I'm going to show you the new and advanced maps we have developed and the underlying technology that has enabled this. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I mentioned this different data structure that we're using. And this is a technology called H3, which is the industry standard for geospatial analysis. And it incorporates using grid systems, which are critical in order to accurately analyze the data and make everything comparable with the next grid system along. And it basically involves partitioning the Earth into different grid cells. And the shape of these is hexagons, as you can see in this bottom right corner. It shows here quite nicely how the world can be split up into different hexagons, and at the highest level of detail there are 122 of these that cover the surface of the globe, if you will. And then within each of these hexagons there are a further group of hexagons, and so on and so on. And those are the different levels of granularity that using this technology can adhere to. And you can see in the illustration on the left here how in the United Kingdom postcodes, for example, can be quite different, quite random, and there's no uniformity to these. So it's difficult to compare one postcode to the next because they're different sizes and shapes and so on. So this technology of H3 was actually developed originally by Uber and has now become the industry standard around the world. It's an open source library that provides these hexagons at 16 fixed resolutions. And you can see here the top level 0, so when you're zoomed out and looking at the entire world, there are 122 of these unique hexagons. And then we step all the way down to level 15, so that's there are 550 trillion of these that cover the world, and each one of those is around the size of a small table, whereas at resolution 0, the very highest, broadly speaking, it's the size of a continent. And then there's different levels of detail within these. And for your use case and for our mapping situation here, you're able to select up to 5 to use within your mapping scenario, because generally speaking, you wouldn't want to go from zoomed out view of the entire world down to something as detailed as a small bathroom or a small table, that sort of thing. So the ability there is the user gets the chance to select 5 levels, and then you can scroll in and out to see those levels aggregated at the different resolutions. So that's the background and the theory around why we've chosen to use this H3 data technology. Let's start looking at the maps themselves. Okay, so here we are in ThoughtSpot, and we've just got a live board here. So you'll be able to see straight away that this map on the left looks a bit different to that you normally see within ThoughtSpot for mapping. And if I scroll in, you can see the hexagons there clearly on screen, and as I'm scrolling in, those hexagons are changing. So these are the different H3 levels. So we've got about 5 levels here in the chart, and as I scroll in, you can see those numbers changing and the aggregation of those changing. And I eventually zoom in a bit further, we'll see the individual data points. There we go. So this is how a normal chart in ThoughtSpot would look if you've got it set to the dots. And when you zoom out on a chart like that, then you still just see the individual dots. You don't get any kind of rolling up or any aggregation of the data. And that's one of the most powerful things of the H3 technology, is that actually it can easily group the data points together in a very efficient and quick way. Other things to call out on this view at this stage, so we have the legend down here on the bottom right. We've actually got 2 different measures that we can click on and select, and that's actually changing the measure in the view at the moment. So that's configurable for the user. They can choose a couple of different measures to have as layers on that map. And keeping an eye on the legend still, if I zoom in from here, or zoom out even, we're at 550,000 is the most dense data point at the moment. If I scroll out a bit, then that jumps up to 1 million. And that's just showing that aggregation happening as we zoom in and out. And then the final sort of user feature here that you can see is the ability to change. We're on the outdoors view at the moment. I can change that to streets as the background map type. We've got all sorts, so that there is dark there. And of course, this just depends on your use case, what you want to, or how you want the map to look. Loads of different settings that I'll show you towards the tail end of the video in terms of configuring this mapping technology. And then on here, as you'd expect with any ThoughtSpot liveboard, any other views that are on the page, if you want to use those to filter down, like you would do, right click on one and select filter, that will filter the map as well. So there we go, I've just zoomed in or just filtered down on one particular data point on the chart, and that's done the appropriate filtering on the map as well. And I can clear that as you would do normally. Okay, so in this view on the proximity analysis tab, this is just simply laid out in different tabs as a nicer way to do the demonstration. If I use this menu on the top left here that pops out, you can see we have a few options. We've got draw polygon, draw circle, and then isochrones with the respective abilities to delete those. So if I leave it on draw polygon for now, and then this is there in order to let you filter down to a particular set of data points in a few different ways. So a polygon is this kind of shape that you can configure and draw freehand, and then as you complete the shape there, it just filters down the view to those particular data points that are captured within that. And again, you can do the usual zooming in, zooming out, and the H3 hexagons work in exactly the same manner that we've kind of come accustomed to, but just focused on those ones that we've drawn the shape around. Similarly, if I delete that feature and then go for draw circle, I can click and expand the circle out, and you may be able to see I've got 1, 2 miles, 3 miles selected there. If I go to 3 miles and then click, it just filters down the view to just those data points that fall within the circle that we've drawn. This is useful, as I say, for filtering down your data. And the final one to show here, I'll just zoom out a bit, is isochrones. And isochrones are really important because if we just use a circle to say what is the distance from there to there, in a straight line, then that's great. But if you're talking about, for example, travel times, you can't necessarily travel as far in one direction as you can in the other due to a variety of different factors, such as the road network. Maybe there aren't even any roads there, maybe there's traffic and so on. And the way these come in, if I just type in any old address, let's do Sheffield Lane Top, just a particular road in Sheffield, you can see as I select that, it zooms in on the map. We'll leave it as a mode of transport of car at the moment. And there's a few different options that we can configure here. I'm not going to go into great detail, but if I just say the travel time or travel catchment of 5 minutes and hit submit, that's going to calculate where you could travel to within 5 minutes from the given location that we set out there, that Sheffield Lane Top. So if I zoom in, you can see the yellow line is this isochrone that's been drawn around based on 5 minutes travel time in a car from where I set that data point to be. So that's the data point in the middle. You can only get, if you're traveling 5 minutes to the east over here, you can only get so far because the road actually stops, and this is kind of a park that you can't get to by car. Whereas if you're traveling to the north, you can see this kind of road that runs up to the north. You can get quite a long way in 5 minutes. So this is all really useful ways of interpreting the data. Perhaps you're running a distribution company and you need to see how far people can get. A takeaway delivery driver, for example, how far can they realistically deliver in a 10-minute time frame? Here we're looking at boundary lines. So what that means is, at the moment, if I just zoom in here, you can see that this is set to, if I zoom out ever so slightly, there we go. This is the district of Sheffield. So you can see there, that white outline going around is the district boundary. And then we've got the next level down is a ward and a postcode. So as I zoom in, there we go, we're at ward level there. It's tricky for me to zoom in without it jumping into postcode. If I zoom in using the mouse, you can see we've got individual wards laid out here. So there's one, there's one, there's one, and so on. And then as I zoom in even further, you keep an eye on, for example, this bottom right section. As I zoom in, this is going to jump over, there we go, to postcode level. It's just another way of being able to display the data and be able to segregate it out using boundaries. Moving on to the heat map section. This is all part of the Map2Spot, so this is all configurable from one custom chart, but we've just split them out into different maps here on different tabs of a live board, purely for demonstration purposes. to save flicking through the different settings. You can see just once again another way of laying out your data. As I zoom in, this heat map is changing, and you can overlay that with the isochrones, for example, or the grid pattern of the hex values, for example. Just a different way of displaying it, again based on the user's use case. Finally, in terms of the different visuals, we have the ability to have the 3D mapping. Generally, data points on a map don't work that well in 3D, but we found that the H3 level of mapping works really nicely. It's very good for the users to be able to navigate around and see things in 3D, and of course these change as you zoom in as well. So you can see that changing there, and when we get down to the data point level, of course there is no three-dimensional aspect to those, they're just dots on a map. But when I scroll out a couple, again, at that view, that's really useful to be able to see the density of some of the data points. So that's it in terms of our Map2Spot. I think the final thing I probably want to show, if I jump back to the first tab, because this illustrates it quite nicely, this is just an answer on a live board. And as usual, I can go and I can use Spotter against this data set. I can edit this, and this is where I'll just show you some of the settings that we have. So if I go to the chart type over here, these are the normal out-the-box ThoughtSpot chart types, and you see down the bottom we've got custom chart types, and ours is one of those. If I go to the settings cog and we're into the configure section, here's the different H3 levels that you can have in view. So you can have a maximum of 5, as it says there, and we've gone for level 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, and that seems to be the suitable zoom ratio for this demo. Obviously, if you went right out to level 0, then that's looking at something in great detail, and level 16 is looking at kind of a global view. We've got the 2 different measures that we've got in the view here, and you can see you can add up to 5 different measures, and if you do, then those will appear in the legend down here, and you'll be able to select those there. So again, really useful to be able to configure this exactly as you want and be able to quickly switch layers between the different measures that you're looking at. You need a latitude and a longitude in here in order for the H3 detail to work, and then there's some other optional bits of information here that you can add in. If I jump into the settings, this is really comprehensive, lots and lots of customization available for the users, so you can change all sorts of different things. I won't step through all of these, but effectively, if it's there, generally speaking, you can change it. But I think the main things to call out are you can toggle things on and off in terms of whether you want it 3D or not, if you want tooltips on, if you want to change the color scheme or the aggregation type. So being able to change the color scheme is one of the most useful in terms of the opacity, but there's lots and lots of different settings here, so you can really get it configured to exactly how you want it to look and feel. So that's it in terms of the Map2Spot demo. Hope you like what you see. Do leave us some comments, get back to us about what it is that you particularly like about this. If you'd like any more information, do reach out. You can see us on our 7D Experts LinkedIn page or on our website, and we hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.